So this is the Guys with Beards podcast. Here's our third episode. And today we're going to be talking about difficulty. So I'm Sean.
Bilot.
David. Kyle.
Skipped me, but yeah, I'm Alex, I guess.
You're the sound guy. You don't count.
It's true.
Remember,
Yeah.
you are nothing.
He's something. So, difficulty. I've been playing Fire Emblem Three Houses lately, and I'm finding it, really easy. And I don't know why that is. I think it's due to the fact that Nintendo was trying to make it easier for newer players, but it's, really easy.
Well,
And Fire Emblem has a tendency to not be seen as easy.
I think it's more of an inclusive series. I mean, when you think about accessibility, you don't think about Fire Emblem games. It's more of people who enjoy those JRPG tactics-based games, you know. But I think
Right.
with Three Houses, they were trying to market it towards a larger audience, which I think probably played into the difficulty a little bit.
Yeah, but they just released a free DLC with a new difficulty called Maddening, which I've yet to try out yet.
A lot of games, especially Nintendo, with Breath of the Wild, they did the same exact thing with Master Mode or whatever it's called. They did the exact
free
same
DLC.
thing.
I don't think
Well,
so.
no, I'm talking about the difficulty, with an update.
Like the challenges and all
Yeah.
that stuff. Oh, yeah.
Well, that's interesting that they're releasing difficulty.
And Mario Odyssey did the same thing with the Luigi's balloon thing. Like that, there's some insane stuff that people put in there.
Right.
So it's almost like Nintendo's thing to do that with they appeal to the main audience of the game, and then
they
later on they're
release-
here's the hardcore stuff,
Well, Nintendo's a largely reactionary company. They really listen to their fan base, I think, more than most companies.
They do now.
Yeah.
I mean, especially with the Switch, they've been really good about it ever since the Switch released, and so games like Odyssey and all that are getting these game modes that sometimes are free, which is really, really great for the fan base.
They're good at listening to their fans
Yeah.
now.
Okay,
They
yeah, I
haven't
mean-
been good at listening to their fans for a while now.
And here's a take on that difficulty anyway. Is that difficulty not artificial difficulty? Are we not creating environments where we have to just play the exact same game that we already played through, just with one or two more challenging stipulations to it? I can't get hit as many times.
Yeah.
Is that really what we want the game to be harder?
I feel like that's up to personal preference. Like when I play GTA, sometimes you follow the street laws.
Oh yeah,
that's hard, especially in GTA.
You try
you
to
can
not
make
get
up
the
your
police
own
on you.
difficulties. I'll go back to Fire Emblem, for example. You can make a rule where, when your units die, they're dead. As long as you're playing on classic mode.
Like nuzlocking in Pokemon.
You have two choices when you play the game: casual or classic, right? You should play on classic. That's the Fire Emblem experience. Certain people will want to play on casual, but you should definitely play on classic.
When someone dies, they die.
When
right?
someone dies, they die.
Like XCOM. Yeah.
But you always reset. It's just not an option.
you
Because
restart.
you learn to love these characters because it has the whole persona aspect to it now.
so you can get the story you want too.
Yeah,
the outcome you
but
want. In the end.
you always reset when a character dies, but you could put an insane stipulation, if a character dies, let them die. But I doubt anyone will do that.
And I think that brings us to an interesting subject on giving your players the option to have that difficulty. Some games don't do that. If you're thinking about games, we talked a little bit earlier today about games like Sekiro, which when that game initially released, huge controversy about it was that it didn't have an easy mode. And I know that the hardcore players who already play Dark Souls, and Alex can attest to this kind of stuff. It's these games don't have an easy mode because that's not how they're meant to be played. I think it defeats the purpose of the game if you make it easy.
It's a preset difficulty. Yeah.
And what is easy? It changes, I think, over genres. What the definition of that
So
is.
why do some games have the option to have an easy mode, but why do other games not then?
I feel like a cool game to bring into question when you talk about anything like this is Getting Over It. A lot of games.
I'm still not over it.
That's the one where you're climbing the mountain.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'm so close to finishing that game. I'm stuck on pretty much the point right before you get launched into space, and it's so terrifying. You have to hop across these 3 floating rocks, and if you lose there, it's over.
Yeah, you are close, but you're also seconds away from restarting the game.
Yeah. I'm close, but I'm also not
Close,
at
but
all.
no cigar.
And a lot of the philosophy of games like that is that you're supposed to get mad at it.
Oh yeah.
You're supposed to feel the frustration of losing over and over again.
Yeah.
a lot of games that are meant to give you the best, most anticipating climaxes have to give you the most frustrating, grindy, terrible
It's that feeling of
situations.
satisfaction. Yeah.
So this brings me to another point because that's almost like a Flash game, even though I know it was on Steam.
Oh, yeah.
My question is for this is, you remember Happy Wheels, right? That game.
God, I remember Happy
Wheels.
Wheels.
Is like the same kind
Oh,
of
God.
like, premise as that, right? In that game, if you like, I know there was a couple of YouTubers that got pretty upset when playing Happy Wheels, but I feel there's a complete difference with Happy Wheels in this game, and like, but they're both entertainment, right? They're both entertaining to watch.
Yeah.
They're really, really
Yeah.
funny.
I mean, I think when watching people get mad at games is some of what like the reason people play them. You know.
But like, why do people get more mad at getting over it than Happy Wheels?
Because getting over it throws it in your face.
Yeah,
that
that's
you
true.
suck.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that is true. Yeah.
Some context, Bet Foddy also made QWOP.
Yeah.
It
Yep.
was one of the first games that was insanely frustrating that like anyone played on the internet.
I still haven't
yeah.
figured that out.
And I think it's based
It's
around
like a rhythm.
Oh,
You
yeah,
get a
I'm not
rhythm.
good
It's
at
based
it.
around the mechanic of like here's this one sole mechanic in this game, and the entire game is learning the mechanic and getting good at it.
And that's a huge
Yeah.
part of difficulty is
Yeah.
patience, which, I mean, a lot of these days, people really don't have patience anymore, which is a big problem. I mean, when you get in a game like Sekiro, bringing it back to that, is when you die 5 times in a row, a lot of people get discouraged. It's like, wow, I mean,
Yeah.
what am I really doing? I just spent like 2 hours in this fighting the same guy,
But
and
patience
I'm not getting anywhere.
is really the key in that game. It's all about biding your time until the right moment. I played the game once where I was in the next to last boss fight. Not like the hardest one, but the one that like completes the story.
Yeah.
And I beat that boss by just running around directly away from him, and when he used a move that had a lot of lag, I had enough time to get 2 real quick hits on him and never be in danger.
Oh, yeah.
That's the
So-
game, man.
Like,
Sometimes these fights take like hours. I mean, that's just how it is.
if you find the one thing to do that you are also capable of doing, it's not that hard, but you still had to die like 20, 25 times maybe
Yeah.
to even figure that out.
I mean, it's...
But that's where the game is rewarding.
Yep. I mean,
is
it rewards you for figuring it
completing
out. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's kind of like almost, it's like a brain teaser in a way. I mean, it rewards you for thinking outside the box and like creating your own way to get through the obstacle.
Exactly.
The fun of difficulty is overcoming challenges.
Yeah, exactly. And
I mean, that's the essence, though. But
and I think that's kind of like lessened over the years.
what I'm trying to say though, the counter argument is when we give difficulty levels to players, that basically lets them choose, like I'm like, let's say I'm really bad at this game, but someone's really good. We can play the same game and both have this like rush of euphoria when we overcome this challenge. I may be playing on easy because I'm horrible at video games, but I still get the same rush from some guy who has been playing video games his whole life playing on the hardest difficulty.
Well, then I kind of have to ask, do you think it's wrong when games don't include those other options?
I don't think it's wrong, but I think it is limiting to the amount of people that would want to play the game.
It's up to
Yeah.
the artist,
Yeah,
right?
I was
The artist can, like, if you look at a piece of art, right, and the art has no meaning, right? If the artist says this has no meaning, the person that is seeing the art can take any meaning. And
Right.
when the artist says, I based it off of this, right? Or like something of that nature, that's what the painting means. However, the person that is seeing the art can take it in whatever. It's not, you are setting the limitation as the artist.
It's based
but
on perception.
The person can take it however they want. Alex, what were you saying?
It's just like developers want to. It's a choice of whether the developers want someone to interpret a game a certain way. It's do I like, for instance, Sekiro. Like that game was released and it was pretty strict on not having any other difficulty modes because this is the game. This is the way I want it to be played. This is the experience I want people to have, and this difficulty. I don't want to make it easier because that's not how I want it to be. You know what I mean?
Totally agree.
So in that sense, it really is up to the artist, and it's
Sure, but do you think it could have been a better game?
No.
I feel specifically when questioning Sekiro, you have to keep in mind the curve of difficulty that the game offers. It offers you opportunities to do things that are just a little bit more difficult at an earlier time than other things that might be easier to do, just for you to get an edge and to be able to stomp on the easier thing. It's all about creating your own path through the game. So I feel like if you create a difficulty where you make things easier, you open a lot more pathways that you didn't originally intend for, and could then skip through a lot of the game that you would rather have to experience.
So you're saying, because I didn't play through Sekiro.
Yeah.
I played through Dark Souls 1. So you're saying in Sekiro you have the option, depending on like which areas you go to, is kind of a way of choosing difficulty.
In a way, yeah. I mean,
Like,
For sure.
you can definitely jump into some harder boss fights really early in the game, and I mean, you can beat them if you're good enough. I mean, it's
Because you can do that in the first Dark Souls.
oh yeah, you can. It doesn't really restrict you in that way. You're just gonna have less options to fight those bosses with. But I mean, the base mechanics allow you to still be able to beat those bosses.
How I see like the games like this, especially like, Dark Souls and Bloodborne, is that again another art reference, but like to an instrument. Your controller is an instrument. You start playing games like my first game was Mario, and learning
Which
how
Mario?
to. Oh, the original Mario, for the
Mario
NES.
Brothers?
Yeah.
For the NES. It was your first Mario.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Little backstory. I have a farm in Ohio, and we had a Nintendo Entertainment System there, and played that and Mario 3. 2 games, awesome.
Mario Brothers 3, one of my favorites.
Excellent game.
And we can get to Mario games in a sec, but what was I saying? It was something.
You were talking
The
about-
controller's
Oh
your
yeah, the
instrument.
controller is an instrument, right? You learn how to play the controller, right? And then it's kind of like music. Once you learn the easy stuff, you start getting progressively harder and harder. And like that's why some people can play Dark Souls and wear nothing and defeat the boss because they're so good with the controller, while some other people have a cap limit, right? So when you have a set difficulty, anybody can go into it and get better. Or some people are already amazing at the game, and that's what makes difficulty fun. Is just getting to a point where you feel you can push the game.
Can anyone sit down, any person, and say, I want to play Sekiro, and I want to, like, beat the game? Even someone with no video game experience.
It will take a long time. I truly do believe that someone will be
Like,
able to
anyone
figure.
could.
I do.
I think the problem is that because of how like popular that type of game is, if you think about Dark Souls, Demon Souls, Bloodborne, any games like that, they're so popularized to be hard that it discourages a lot of people from wanting to play them because it goes, oh wow, I've seen this guy die 30 times playing this game. I don't even play games that much. Why would I even try this?
But one thing I noticed with Dark Souls 1 at least, because that's the only one that I played of the Dark Souls series on the Switch, and on the PC, and I noticed that a lot of the difficulty comes from you fight the boss, and then you fight the boss again, and then you fight the boss again, and then eventually you beat the boss.
Right.
And, like, it's not necessarily super difficult. It's just that it's...
It forces you to be at 100% on top of your game to beat this boss because it is muscle memory and repetition is what makes it
I
so you
think
can
you're talking
beat
about
it.
room for error. There's just literally no room for error.
Yeah.
If you don't know what you're looking at coming in or have a reaction time to be able to react as it comes at you, then you cannot get it correct the first time. You will never be able to in that circumstance.
Yeah.
That's where like my personal problem lies with like the big perception about Dark Souls as someone who put way too many goddamn hours into Dark Souls 1, Bloodborne, and Dark Souls 3.
What about Dark Souls 2?
Dark Souls... We don't talk about that.
hey, a lot of people like that game.
I honestly,
some people like
me
the game.
included.
that's fair, it has its benefits, has its
It's like
whatever.
Bioshock 2.
Talk about that later. Anyway, so my problem is like after playing it so much, like you realize that I don't want to be that guy who says it, but like Dark Souls in and of itself, the concept of the game is not that hard. It's like any other pattern-based game that you would play.
That's what I was
Every
trying to get
single enemy has a pattern, has a set amount of tasks they can do, right? And that's I think what deters people most away from it is the fact that it's just a little less forgiving than other games, and that's it.
That's
And-
a good
and
way to
honestly,
put it. It's less
like,
forgiving.
the fact that just because people die a lot during the game, when the point of the game is to die, go explore a little bit more, die, explore a little bit more, die, explore a little. That's essentially how the entire game is played from area to area. You know, it's
And that's the second part of the difficulty thing that people like that. It's one is the achieving your goal. Two is understanding the pattern.
right.
Right. When you understand the pattern, it gets really enjoyable, and you get to like master the pattern.
Yeah, I mean it's the thrill of like being on edge. Like bringing it back again to Sekiro, but like when you get near like the end of the game and these bosses are so high octane where you can't take a breather at any point during the fight, otherwise you will lose. I mean, that's just how it is. But it's the thrill of like, I can do this. I know I can do this, and you still die, and you're like, I definitely could have won that fight, but I slipped up once, and that's my fault.
Right.
And you're gonna be pissed about it, of course. I mean,
Yeah.
but I mean, it's also that kind of like hatred towards the game that like I need to do this again, otherwise I can't sleep at night. You know?
I was actually doing some research about like difficulty and like there was actually this scholarly article about when like they asked like a selected group of gamers of like if you got killed in this game or you were defeated or you lost, you know, is it the game's fault or is it your fault? And like 60% of the people said it's my fault. So that means the majority of people understand that it's them that needs the work. And then other people, like, there's other categories too, but the second biggest one was like the game was too hard or something.
We gotta
Right?
put that in the description.
It's just
Yeah, I'll find that, yeah.
It's just unfortunate, in my opinion, that like people get deterred away from games like Dark Souls like that, when honestly they could put about as much effort as they did in other games they had hard times beating and have the same amount of success. You know, and people like see Dark Souls and they go, "Oh my God, that game's so hard," you know, blah 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 blah, and it's like if you sat down and put as much effort as you did into reading any other game that has patterns, which is like, I mean, shit, what game doesn't have patterns for you to read? Like,
Guitar Hero.
A lot of games these days are relatively pretty easy that a lot of people like to play. Like, they're grindy games. Like, they're not too difficult. They're
That's
like
where the
grindy.
market is.
Yeah,
That's
that's
what
something
the
that you
market is.
cannot
And I was-
have a failure at.
I was
in
just about to
any
say,
way.
Yeah.
that's how the market's changed. I mean, games these days don't, and in general, don't require a lot of patience. You know, it's about what's convenient, what's the quickest way to get to
Here's
A
a
to B,
perfect
you know?
example. World of Warcraft. That game used to require an insane amount of patience.
Oh, and it's I mean, now
it
that with the
was-
release of Classic again,
Yeah.
you know, people are understanding that
And
again.
I haven't had the chance to play
Oh,
Classic.
neither have I. I need to.
I need to, but I'm excited because I didn't
wow.
play a lot of Classic when it was out.
And I think the funny thing is that some people that were like really excited for Classic was like, I hate retail, and there's a lot of reasons I hate retail. Don't get me started on that. But Classic requires that patience, and players that went into it not having played Classic before it came out was like, I really don't like this version of WoW. I prefer the convenience of being able to go where I want, when I want, like flying from place to place. But the players that played Classic when it came out understand that like that's what they loved about the game is that it requires the time. You know, it's hard. You can't draw two mobs without
Classic
dying.
is way more rewarding. I mean, that's
an opinion, for
what
sure.
you hear.
That's
I
an
mean,
opinion.
to me, we played as a friend group for a while. Like there was like 5 of us, and we played. And I feel like we would have had way more fun in Classic, leveling up together and like doing dungeons than we
It
would have.
requires more teamwork.
Yes, it does.
You
Yeah.
have to work
Yeah.
together to be able to level up that quickly and be able to get ahead of the curve. You have to rise to that challenge. But with leveling up in what we originally played was, I think, we played Mists of Pandaria right
Yeah.
before it turned into Warlords of Draenor.
Oh, God.
Draenor. So we played a pretty good expansion in my opinion.
Mr.
But,
Pandaria was pretty fun.
but even then, like, we could do anything we needed to by ourselves and then
Yeah.
just hop into a raid finder or
It was
Dungeon
like it was
Finder
like it was
when
a
we didn't
s-
have
It was
friends.
a
Yeah.
solo game, and it was optional to be friendly.
Yeah.
But Classic requires you to be friendly and be
yeah,
social.
and
Yeah.
reach out more.
Retail's definitely more of a solo game.
Like you hear stories of people in WoW Classic talking about how they go to like the chat and they're like, hey, like I'm looking for
yeah.
friends, like let's get together, let's do this
Yeah.
dungeon, and you make these great connections with people, and you
And
go out
that's
and you
the
do
soul
it.
of WoW, I think. You know, is
That's
coming
the soul
together.
of Classic
yeah.
WoW.
Yeah.
The soul of WoW
Retail
right now
is some muddled piece of
that's
crap.
why I'm not playing.
I
it
do
right now.
I do want to bring up on the subject of WoW Classic is like whenever there's a difficult game, you can't escape anywhere from people talking about it. Like when Bloodborne came out, that was a big deal. When Cuphead came out, that was a big deal. WoW Classic is a huge deal, and that's
It's
again
because games are easy now.
and that's why I'm saying
Yep.
it's. But like, are those games popular because of their difficulty, or are they popular because they're good?
Well, things like WoW Classic have
I
a
think
legacy.
they're popular because they're different.
Yes.
But like, okay, I have an answer for my question. Is that I think those games are great. obviously there's a reason why people want to go back to WoW Classic, because that was the time of its golden age, right? Cuphead is, even though it's a short game, it has some of the best bullet storm gameplay of that genre. It's amazing.
I actually feel like that game's carried by its animation style.
Oh.
Yeah,
That's why
and the
it's so
music,
different.
So unique.
but it's still like the gameplay's solid.
The gameplay is honestly okay, but it's short. The game is
Yeah, that's what I said.
incredibly short for someone that's used to the like grind a boss out style of game.
Yeah.
Like I played another one called Titan Souls on Steam, and that game is also pretty short. And I felt the exact same way about it. I honestly feel like those two games are so comparable. It's just one's 8-bit and the other one's hand drawn.
But like, do you take that away from the game? Do you, because it's obviously harder to draw in that like.
oh yeah,
like-
I feel like the length of the game is probably just as much as the artist's workload could handle up until they felt
And
they
They
could
released
release.
an expansion for it, and they
Yeah,
or
and
have
they
a-
did put out more.
And the game's cheap,
I'm
isn't it?
sure they plan on releasing another game in the future.
Pretty sure the game's like $20.
That kind of brings us to another interesting point, is that I think difficulty really made a resurgence with indie games.
Oh, Super
Especially-
Meat Boy?
Yeah,
Meat Boy?
exactly. You know,
Oh,
like games
crap.
like a more recent one, like let's say Overwhelm on the Switch.
Oh, yeah.
I cannot tell you how many times or how many runs I put into that game and gotten so close to the end, and then have just screwed it up and gotten incredibly mad. But I think it's like these games that don't require 2 hours of your time. It takes like, I don't know, 2 minutes to really do a run that you could like die quickly in. It's these smaller games that bring difficulty because it's under less of a AAA scope. I mean, when they don't have these
Let's
large
think of,
companies
like
behind it.
What's like an easy game that's like very popular right now?
Borderlands 3. No, I'm just kidding. I haven't played it yet.
I mean,
Yeah,
it does
I
have an
haven't
easy
played it
mode
yet.
actually.
Okay.
What do you guys think of Borderlands 3? Actually,
Oh, me and
real
Alex
quick,
have been
so
playing
far
a good
I
bit of
played
it.
I love it. It has some of the best, like.
I think the
It
sound
has some of
design
the-
and gunplay is beautiful.
The gunplay is probably some of the best gunplay I've ever seen. In
I'm
the
gonna
FPS
go so
I've
far as to
played.
say it's the best gunplay I've
Like,
seen in a game.
everything from down to the sound design, down to the. We'll talk about it at some other point, but
I've-
everything down to the sound design, the clickiness of how everything feels, how tight everything
It's
feels.
just
when you're
gratifying.
when
It's
you're
so
ADSing,
gratifying.
It's extremely like, very
And-
gratifying.
Can't wait to get it.
And I mean, we play on normal mode as because I'm used to playing Borderlands 1 and 2 where they didn't have the option for an easier mode.
yeah.
So I'm fine with like getting my ass kicked a million times.
Is there a hard mode?
When you unlock it, there is I believe it's called Mayhem mode or something like that.
Okay.
That's end game level 50 stuff, which I can't wait to get to personally. There's a Vault Hunter mode, which has been
It has
in
a
every
great
game.
in-game. Has a great in-game.
I haven't seen anything about it because I don't want to spoil it for myself. But it has Vault Hunter mode, which is insanely hard. But I mean, the people that like played from Borderlands 1 and 2 like understand that that's what the game's about. It's about grinding out for that really good loot, and then you can go to your friend and be like, "Hey, I got this gun. You suck."
This video is sponsored by Borderlands 3. No, I'm just kidding. No, the thing I want to talk about, you asked what's the easiest game right now, and it's kind of going to go to another subject, is Smash easy? Is Smash, like,
current Smash?
Competitive
Comparatively.
games, like
Yeah.
multiplayer competitive games, bring difficulty in a whole nother way. You're no longer competing against the game. You're competing against other people by
Yeah.
the rules of the game.
Yep.
well, what I'm talking about Smash is again, we've probably talked about it every single podcast, is that we're very competitive in Smash, but like when we go hang out with other people that are not competitive, we play free-for-alls and everything, and I can have my girlfriend play, and she does, she has fun playing Yoshi, and like and she can do it.
It doubles as a party game.
She doesn't play a lot of video games, but she can do it and she has fun. And does that mean it's the easiest game right now?
Well,
The whole premise of Smash was that it was supposed to be easy. Like, they were supposed to be
Yeah,
applicable for
exactly,
people
yeah.
to play. Like, the whole
Yeah.
thing is that they show you in the tutorial, hey, look, you got 2 buttons, and you can use the 4 different directions, and you got a bunch of moves. That's how you play the game. Done. Like,
at a base level, it's easy to understand. For
It's
somebody that just
extremely
wants to
easy to
play it
understand.
to have fun
Yeah.
with their friends at a 4-player
Versus,
couch
like-
situation, it's
Yeah.
easy. It's
But
accessible.
easy to understand also doesn't mean easy to play. Like Mario is one of the most easy to comprehend things of all time.
Yeah.
Jumpman. That's all he does. He jumps.
I'm just saying, like, you don't have your little 6-year-old cousin over, and like, you don't whip out fucking Street Fighter 3. You know? You whip out
play
Smash-
Dark Souls?
you take out Smash Ultimate, or you take out Smash
Well,
whatever, and
Not Melee.
Difficulty isn't the same thing as appeal.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
the kid
Yeah.
is gonna have way more fun, and it appeals way more to him to play Smash Bros. But honestly, like if you have a 14-year-old male example, they might want to play Tekken.
Yeah.
I love Tekken. All right.
I can I get by that, but I'm trying to think of other easier games, but Smash just comes to my head as like the easiest game because it's.
But this is a game that's its difficulty depends on the person you're
It's
fighting.
Exactly.
And I think
it's a
I'm
multiplayer
trying
game.
to think of like an easy game.
What about
that
a
people are
simulation game?
I feel like Odyssey is
think
super
it's a-
easy. That's a
Odyssey's
very
pretty
recent,
easy.
incredibly influential game.
Yeah.
But it's very fun.
And I also would like to say that Breath of the Wild, in comparison to Zelda games of the past, is also very easy.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah,
agree.
for sure.
Is Ocarina of Time a hard game?
I feel like, given the state of the internet, not necessarily, because you could figure out the puzzles that make it difficult
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
objectives that you have to go to. I feel like when like Zelda throws her ocarina off into the river and you go and dive into the river to get the Ocarina of Time, like I feel like you'd miss that if
Yeah.
you didn't pay attention to the cutscene
And
just
Yeah.
hit start through
Yeah.
it.
that brings us to an interesting thing, which is
what people do nowadays.
difficulty is partially defined on what the game gives the player. You know, things like Ocarina, it's not going to tell you where to go 24/7. You kind of have to wander
They
around.
tell you where you should go.
Yeah, it gives you-
And
you
have
you
to
might
find it
know
out, yeah.
that Lake Hylia is the lake over
but I
on
can't
that
be
side.
I can't be the only one who's gotten turned around in Ocarina and been like, where the hell do I actually go for
What
like a
am I
good
doing
hour or
now?
two?
Some
That
older
happens a
Zelda
lot.
games. Some older Zelda games, you like
Like
they
Link
wanted
to
you
the
to look
Past?
at the game pamphlet
Yeah.
to know where the hell you're
Zelda.
supposed
In
to
the
go.
original Zelda, you had to look at the game pamphlet.
And
Yeah.
honestly, I kind of miss that. I mean, that's not something that you see that
I
often these days.
like the first Metroid Prime. It does a good job of this because
It just gives you corridors and stuff to go down to,
But
and you
Met-
explore it yourself.
But
yeah.
here's the thing that Metroid Prime it has this hint system that I believe you can turn on and off, and it's like, so it gives you a time limit to basically explore and like, all right, I got this new item. I'm gonna think about all the places in the map that I've been that I could apply this item to. You explore for a little while, and then if the game sees that you haven't explored it for like 3 to 4 hours, it's like, hint, like,
Yeah.
you should go here. Like, there's something to do
Yeah.
there. But you can turn that off. But
Yeah.
it's a good system because it's like, sometimes you might get tired of like exploring. I
So-
believe Metroid Prime 1 and 2 does that.
That brings me to the next point, and I want to go back to because I brought up simulation games, and we'll go back there. But does a controller define how difficult a game is? Like when you play Metroid Prime
It
with a
can.
GameCube controller, it's not as good as when you play it with a Wiimote. Or
Oh, the Wiimote's objectively better.
and we talked about this before the podcast is Ocarina of Time and Mario 64 on the Nintendo 64.
Yeah.
That is difficult.
And I think Bilot has a lot of good opinions, especially
Yeah.
on Mario 64.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
played a lot of it.
I've played Mario 64 for the first time when I was like 3 years old, and it's one of the games that I liked the most because it was Mario. The two that I played the most were Super Smash Bros. And Super Mario 64. And the amount of times that I played Super Mario 64 and played through a total of 3 stars over and over, and I thought I was good at the game because I could beat King Babam.
Oh man, I remember the first time I beat him. I was like,
First
I'm
star.
probably the best player at this game, in all honesty. I don't know anybody else who's beaten King
yeah, I
Bob.
beat that Koopa in a race.
And then you got to school and you're like, wow, everybody's kind of beating them.
when
Like
Wow.
the actual difficult parts of the game, like Tick-Tock Clock.
oh,
I
that's
can't
a hard
even
one. Yeah,
imagine
that's a hard
looking
one.
at Tick-Tock Clock as a 3-year-old. Like that's a whole nother world
Oh,
of
yeah.
difficulty.
very intricate with how the mechanics of the level.
And
work.
like it doesn't tell you that if you go in it right at 12, if you don't look around for a few hints, that it freezes.
Yeah.
To make it twice as easy for half the
So,
levels.
when you like because there's a bunch of ports of 64. When you go onto the Wii and play it with a GameCube controller, one of the a better controller than
I
the 64,
honestly
do you
feel
still
like
think
the
it's difficult?
port on the virtual console carries over the problems of the controls, and that's the range of motion of the joystick.
Yes.
It
Yeah,
doesn't
that's a good
care
point.
where you are in between the points. It's gonna pick one of the two.
That's how Mario moves.
He moves
Yeah.
it within like 8
mean-
directions in Mario 64.
And you like see it with speedrunners. They have like they can perform these really intricate moves with like the controllers that they've put so many hours into practicing
Yeah.
those specific movements. with.
Watching Cheese 05 speedrun Super Mario 64 is just
It's so
mind
much
blowing.
fun.
Yeah, it's something I couldn't even imagine about doing.
compared to what I thought I could do with this game that I've played at least once every 2 years since I was 3 years old.
Yeah.
I still am dumbfounded by it, and it's just because of how much time he has in it and how good he is at it.
But do you think if you spent time with that game, do you think it would still be difficult?
I think that game in particular, yes, just because the things that you have to deal with are these minor inconsistencies that are only present in such old games. Like, it's you don't have to deal with 8 directions only of movement because you have each point between that now on your joystick. Like, the Switch does have problems with that on some games, actually.
Yeah.
And
Like which one?
not just with 8-bit style games like Mario Maker 2, like things that could be in any animation style. Like, the D-pad is left and right essentially in Mario. If you hit up or down in combination with left or right, you do get different combinations of movement. So there's essentially 8 different ways to move with this single directional pad. And the Switch controller, the Switch Pro controller, this controller that everybody raves about how great it is, has a really bad D-pad.
Oh, absolutely it does.
You
I
cannot
think we talked
register the
about that
difference
last
between down and
podcast.
right and directly down
Yeah.
half the time for some people. Most people are now that are playing the game often playing with a PS4 controller
Yeah.
that has an adapter for their Switch.
I mean, more recent controllers aren't designed for that kind of movement.
However, they did announce that like new Super Nintendo like controller for the Switch.
Yeah,
which I
Super
probably
Nintendo, yeah.
honestly might buy.
Oh, I was
Yeah,
actually looking at it. It
D-pad
looks
for the
good.
Super Nintendo is pretty sweet. How much is
Exactly.
that? How much are they going to sell that?
Especially
for?
with all those free games that they released
It's
for the
gonna be
Switch, you know?
expensive.
Just
Yeah.
released recently.
I think it's probably gonna be 50 or 60.
I mean,
I'll be
let's
surprised
let's
if it's...
see. Let's
And
see.
and the online library on the Switch is so huge where that controller is going to be useful for so many games.
The Super Nintendo being free for online users is so great.
And it's
I know
really
you
cheap.
still have to pay, but seriously, do the family.
The family of $5.
The
I
family
mean, we do that here, and it's
You get like
for
I
a
think
year
you
it's
can have
$5.
up to like either 6 or 8 people max.
I think it's 8 max. Yeah.
And you can just jump on that plane.
It's $30.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
not
30
bad. That's
bucks?
not
$30
bad.
is not bad.
And that's Bluetooth, right? So you could use
For
it on your
controllers
PC.
anymore,
I heard
especially
they
from
added-
Nintendo.
The
They
standard
added-
for controllers are like 60 plus these days.
Isn't an
Yeah.
individual Joy-Con like $49?
Yeah,
$40.
$49 per
What
Joy-Con.
can
No, I
you
think
do
It looks
with
like
that?
It looks like they gave it a pro controller treatment. It looks like they have tiny buttons for the ZL and ZR. It has a
Interesting.
USB-C charger up top, and this D-pad looks okay. Like I was honestly thinking about picking up and like for like Street Fighter because I refuse
Yes.
to play
Oh my
Street
God.
Fighter
If
with
this
a
works for
fucking
Mario
pro
Maker,
controller.
I will get it for that. That's awesome.
The
Can
game-
you play it with like?
I'm just again, it depends on the D-pad.
And I
quality
think
for me,
it's
but
wireless, right?
It is in fact
Yeah,
wireless.
it's wireless.
It charges like the pro controller. It has a USB-C up top.
The game where I've noticed the bad D-pad of the Pro Controller is...
Hollow Knight.
we'll get there too. No, it's Tetris 99. You have to play with the Joy-Con. Like, I cannot play that game with a Pro Controller, even though I love the Pro Controller. It's such a good controller. But
It feels really good.
I think the
love
Pro
the
controller is
controller.
probably, I don't know, if to me it's the best feeling controller I think
Second
of this
best.
generation.
Second best. Oh, of this generation.
Of this
yeah.
generation.
It's
I'm
like
not
the-
talking about Xbox 360 controllers.
It's
Let's
It's like the
come
same
on now.
problem with the 360 controller. It feels great, but what's up with the D-pad?
Because
I think D-pads aren't as important
Nintendo
anymore.
has the right to the good D-pads, but I'll give it to Sony for having the best.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
absolutely.
GameCube's D-pad is so bad.
Yeah, it's not their
That
strong
thing's
suit.
Horrible.
it's sharp.
horrible.
I think you could probably have the same controller without a D-pad, and it'd probably just be exactly the same.
What did GameCube games even use that D-pad for?
Oh, it was for
Taunts.
menus.
Yeah.
Taunts.
just like Xbox games, you had to
think
use it for like
Maybe
selecting the right
yeah.
selection.
your
Mario
items.
Party, you'd use it to select games. I think that's
Oh,
about
let me
it.
tell you, one of my nostalgic favorites. Not actually a very good game. X-Men: Next Dimension. That is a fighting game. That is a fighting
Excellent
game.
game.
Brilliant fighting game. I recommend anyone play it. Honestly,
Better than Melee.
I can't
In fact,
Okay,
it is
hold on.
in fact better than Melee.
Oh god, we're gonna get a lot of flame for
Alright,
that.
go back to the
No.
sound.
This is
Stop.
important.
Oh
This is
my.
important. You cannot jump in that game unless you use the D-pad. You cannot
So
jump
that's a
in that
bad
plane.
game.
Doesn't register half the input.
So
What do you
the
mean
fact
you
that you
can't
had to,
jump
like, I
without
mean,
using
if you
the
press
D-pad?
up on the regular control stick, you don't jump. If
Yeah,
you press
you
up
can't.
on the D-pad, you do.
Oh my.
So that was one of those games where you had to use the absolute
But that-
garbage
okay,
D-pad in
but
order
that,
to jump.
that comes with the like when the game was released. I mean, movement wasn't that in depth during
Dragon
the
Ball
time.
Z sagas.
Oh,
They
dear
required the
Lord.
D-pad quite often as well.
Oh my God! Don't even get me started on that bull crap.
So I want to come back to the difficulty of like a simulation game. Have you? I don't know
Well,
if you
what
guys
kind
are.
of what are you talking about? Like
What-
Roller Coaster
what
Tycoon?
simulation?
Roller Coaster Tycoon. No,
Stardew Valley? Like, what are you talking
Stardew
about?
Valley's not really simulation. I'm talking about like the simulation game that I've played a lot of recently is City Skylines. Right, that game it's a great game,
Okay.
and you know you've played it too, and you're dealing with the struggle of these you know, the cemetery and the health aid, and that's the biggest part of the game that gets me like struggling, right? And I have no idea what to do, so I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna quit and start a new one. So I feel personally simulation games are easy, and they're meant for people that just like the point and click. I truly do like there's resource management that's the hardest
Dude,
part of the
it
game.
entirely depends on the simulation.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, of course, yeah, but
Yeah.
like,
So don't say they're meant for easy.
if
Okay,
you
I think easy is not the right word. I think their simulation games are patient. They give you time to understand the facets that you have to like build what
Well,
you
I mean,
need to.
the thing that makes the game hard in the end is APM at the end of it. Like,
Yeah.
if time passes and you cannot stop time from elapsing,
Oh, of
and you
course.
don't have an infinite time to make your decisions, then you are going to choke on some of those decisions eventually.
Yeah.
That's the theory of Tetris, is that if you
Yeah.
make a mistake, they compound.
I think they just like describe the broad like scale of tools you have.
But like
better
Game
than
Dev
what games.
Tycoon, that game is
Love
not,
that game.
It's a great game, and when you fail, you're this sucks because you can't really come
Yeah.
back with it.
that game
It's
feels random almost.
yeah,
though, the
like
success
there's
of it.
there's some elements that are like, you know,
I have fun.
yeah, it's a great game, but like, is it hard? Is the simulation game like that hard?
I definitely wouldn't call it difficult, but that doesn't mean it doesn't
think
also
it's a different
provide
kind
the
of
same
difficulty.
feelings that difficulty would.
I think
give
difficulty
you.
in simulation games is extremely different from most
I agree.
types
Yeah.
of difficulty.
Overgeneralization, because there are a lot of
Well,
of
let's name some.
simulation.
Farming Simulator.
Again,
Goat Simulator.
Yeah.
Goat Simulator, the hardest
Pure
simulator.
chaos.
Democracy 3.
Civilization. yeah.
Democracy 3. Like, that game is very difficult. At least when
The
I tried to
Sims.
play it.
That game's not difficult.
It's not.
It's
but
not meant to be
Okay,
difficult.
but I'm
Talking about
saying,
completely
I'm saying,
different
But
like,
that's a simulation.
I'm saying
though.
Democracy 3. It's considered a simulation
Yeah.
game,
So it's
and
not-
that game is super difficult.
Yeah, it's
So
not
you
a
can't-
genre that's
you
defined
can't say
by being
But like, do you
Yeah.
think the majority of the games are easy though? Like, of course, there's
No.
gonna be hard games in every single like category of game, but like,
I think saying that any genre is inherently easy is a
Yeah.
stupid argument. In my opinion.
not really, because I can play Roller Coaster Tycoon 3, right?
So
And
that's
it's
one simulation.
okay.
game.
City Skylines
I
is
think-
not that hard.
I think that saying the word easy, I think, is a bit too harsh. I think we should use casual.
Yeah.
I think simulations are meant for a more
but
casual
casual
setting.
is meant easy.
But just because
right?
it's casual doesn't mean it can't
means-
be hard.
Of
Yeah.
course, of course.
and most like you can't just brand it as most simulators.
Yeah.
Like, there's
Well,
Well, I'm
so
like,
many.
what other simulation games are hard?
don't
Anything
play a
that
lot of
requires
simulators.
Yeah,
you.
it's not a genre I personally don't.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
Oh. Kerbal Space Program.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Real life mechanics.
there we go.
On a faster than light?
That's a real time strategy.
What's that?
game.
Oh, what's the space mechanics one we got?
Really? Real time strategy?
Oh,
Space Engineers. That game is
but that's not
insanely
is that
complicated.
I guess that is a sim, but like,
Simulation games are such a broad thing.
Yeah,
Like,
they can be
you-
of anything. And you
you're-
can make a simulator.
I'm talking about like the games like where you
difficult.
point and click, right? Like Sims and Roller Coaster Tycoon.
So
That's
what
the
genre
game.
is that?
Kerbal
That's
Space Program
definitely
is
a-
entirely pointing and clicking.
Yeah,
You just have to use real physics.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Like when the games apply like real life things, you're like, oh crap.
And I think that I think I'm agreeing with Sean here. Is you can't really say that they're easy because
Yeah.
when you get a simulation and it's really in depth, like Kerbal Space Program, and like it gives you these facets of the game that are extremely complicated that you need to have the know-how on.
A good example would be, I feel, the Devil's Sand game, Flash game that you played can be taken to an nth degree. You can have so many combinations of different kinds of sand that make different elements that the game just gets too complicated. It gets to a point where doing everything, which is the feeling of completing the game, is impossible.
Okay,
Well, does depth necessarily mean difficult though? Like they having the ability to have all these options to do these things, doesn't necessarily make it hard.
I feel like in
unless
a game
unless
like
you
that,
have to do it, you know what I mean? Unless it's part of completing the
what-
game,
yeah.
is getting in depth like
What
that.
are we defining as difficult?
well, Minecraft is a sandbox game, but I feel like completing it and defeating the Ender Dragon is something that not every single person will be able to do
Yeah,
when
sure.
they play Minecraft.
True.
And
Does that mean that they did not complete the sandbox game?
no, I think that's
Well, that's why it's
played
called a
two completely
sandbox.
different ways.
You make the game, right?
Yeah,
You
I'm
make-
completely
but-
talking about Devil's Sand here. This Flash game that's literally a sandbox.
I think
Some iterations of that game give you so many mechanics that you can build a nuclear reactor in them.
That's pretty cool, though.
Simulate a nuclear reactor. Creating radiation even.
I'll just
I think
Google it.
I think another
Going through atomic decay.
But like when when I think of simulation games, I don't think of the difficult ones, right?
Well, it's because of the ones you haven't played.
that's
Yeah,
you though.
That's you.
That is me.
That's your personal experience.
That's me, David
Yeah.
Trains, right? But like, it's
Because you generally stay
I
away
wanna-
from those
I wanna-
complicated
that
kind
is
of games,
kind
at least
of.
simulations.
yeah,
We're rambling on here a bit here. I want to get what is difficulty. Like I want to get a strong definition on what is difficult.
That's hard to define because the difficulty is
Well,
different
let's
for every
try it.
genre.
Let's try it. What is difficult?
different for every person.
I think difficulty is half accessibility, having the option to make it easier.
Like
You're giving me that
a
look.
sense of like a definition of good difficulty, or are you defining difficulty with that statement?
No, I'm not defining it with it. I'm saying that's a facet of it. Is having accessibility to make it easier is what. What do we shake your head for? I'm curious.
All right. Well, what Google says is difficult specifically is needing much effort to or skill to accomplish, deal with, or understand, or characterized by causing hardships or problems.
Thank you, Google.
You're welcome.
Well, there's the standard textbook definition, but what I want to know is what everyone's personal definition of difficulty is. So I think we could probably start with you, Sean. What defines difficulty for you?
What defines difficulty
What
for me?
What do you consider a difficult game?
What do I consider a difficult game? I consider a difficult game something kind of similar to what Google says, something that I'm like struggling with, but like, something that makes me struggle, like something that really like makes me upset. Like, you know, it makes me upset, it makes me stressed, it makes me like upset, it makes me really want to accomplish the goal. Like and it ties into the reward. Like if something's really difficult and there's not that much of a payoff, I'm not really going to enjoy that game very much. But difficulty to me is effort. I mean it's stress. It's difficulty is something that's important for life and too in general. I mean, at a certain point when you grow up, you have to realize that you're going to have to do difficult things if you want to survive in life.
Mhm.
So I think games being difficult is a great thing.
It almost
It's a metaphor.
simulates that like
It-
human instinct to want to succeed.
That's
even.
why I like difficult games so much. It's instinctual in us. And sometimes when we don't get difficulty in our normal lives, like sometimes when we are going through boring periods of our lives, we look towards difficult games to give us that kind of stimulation.
for sure.
What do you think, Bilo? What
I
is-
definitely define difficulty as just anything that I can try 100% at and still fail. Anything like that is difficult. Like
That's a good
I
definition.
gravitate to multiplayer things because I'm then comparing my exact skill to another human, something I'm very capable of comparing myself to, as opposed to like what I'm imagining a human would be doing in this situation. Like another great game that I would say is difficult is Slay the Spire for me. You have to play to a goal in every aspect. You have to build your deck to accomplish something at the given point in the game that you're looking to complete. And if your deck isn't so great in one aspect, you have to cover the weaknesses in the other. It's all about picking the things you need at the right time, and you can try 100% and not get offered the right things and lose outright at a place you might have destroyed earlier on. And that is one of my best examples of a game being difficult, in that it gives you the opportunity to succeed and the opportunity to nearly succeed.
I wanna speak on that. Like, you and I played League of Legends. You played a lot more of it than I did, but I remember when we played. I remember the feeling of like when for people that have played League out there, when it's like when the game is like you're not really sure which team is gonna win, but you really have to like come together at the last second, and like everyone has to create their strategies, and like that is such a rush.
Yeah,
And like
no other.
Even if you lose, like the final like triumph at the last second, when like everyone's like, this is the final strategy, like we have all our items together, like
you need to feel both ends of it.
Yeah.
You need to know what it's like to lose, because you need to know what it's like on the other side when you win at the same time.
And it's the ego comes into it with getting better, and that's part
Man
of the fun
has
of
played sports
Yes.
since the beginning of recorded history.
That is what's great about multiplayer games and difficulty, is they're kind of like sports.
It's
now.
like esports. It's
Yeah.
obviously
Yeah,
showing
and
towards
that's
that side of
what's
an
awesome.
arena.
You're comparing yourself to a human in another way. It's a competition, no matter what. You cannot say that, even if it's not a sport, that it is not a competition. It's like archery in that degree, maybe. Like, maybe it will become something that gets to a point higher than that, but maybe not.
That is the magic of multiplayer games.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it sounds like we're kind of splitting up difficulty into PvE versus PvP. I think they're very different things.
I love PvE difficulty.
Mhm.
Like, I love when a game is like here's your difficulty level, and then you do against that.
Well, I think it's challenge versus self and challenge versus others.
For sure.
And
I think
yeah.
those can both be put together under the veil of difficulty, though.
Yes, absolutely.
Because, like, my definition of it is I can try 100% at Sekiro and still lose, as opposed to trying 100% at Skyrim. When I try 100% at Skyrim, I might die twice through the whole game.
Yeah.
Because I just won't do anything out of my capable bounds that I find particularly challenging at the time, so I can get to the end goal of completing the game with minimal deaths.
Mm-hmm.
I could make the game a lot harder by choosing to go beat more difficult things earlier on, but that's not the fun of that game to me, is doing things out of order. I'd rather take the game as it's supposed to come to me.
I just want to, before everyone else gives their say on difficulty, I just want to say on Skyrim, the fun of Skyrim is definitely not difficulty.
Exactly.
Because when you increase the difficulty on Skyrim, I'm pretty sure it's literally just like enemies have more HP and do more damage. Games like Halo, when you increase the difficulty, they increase the AI.
Yeah,
like
they make them smarter.
That's what a good game does.
The scariest enemy becomes the jackal with a sniper.
Right. Like
Halo 2, yeah.
They increase the artificial intelligence of the enemies. That's what difficulty should be. A lot of games don't do that. They just increase. Like Skyrim does that. It's very lazy.
I'm doing these games as an example just to show that like I can get the exact same feeling of success from something like Sekiro as I do from those tight League games. Like, it is nearly identical of a feeling, if not the same. I feel like I've conquered something that another man has failed to in some way, shape, or form.
But that is, or woman. But that is,
of course,
that is the magic of gaming. But David, what is your definition of difficulty?
I mean, you guys summed it up pretty well. And I have an interesting stance with difficulty, especially among us, right? Out of everyone here, I think I am the most casual gamer.
Maybe,
That's not a bad
maybe
thing.
Alex, but you...
No, because Alex does Dark Souls and everything. I don't really touch those games, you know?
Alex is a masochist gamer.
You know,
in some aspects.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
even then.
Yeah,
It's still
exactly. It's
casual in the sense that they don't subscribe to it all the time.
Exactly. And like, you know, I play Smash, I played Overwatch, you know, all these multiplayer games with you guys, and that's difficulty for me is the you know, it's not, I don't choose to play difficult games. I could do it, you know, if my girlfriend is like needs help with, I'm not saying Mario's difficult, but if there's like a difficult level to her, you know, I'm like, okay, I'll help you beat it, you know. Same thing with the hardest game ever made, Yoshi's Crafted World.
What
No,
do people
such-
get from that though? Like I remember when I'm playing like a Zelda game and I get to the point where I have to look up the like the way to solve a puzzle.
You feel defeated.
I feel like
Yeah.
crap.
Yeah.
And it's like, but it comes to a point where it's like you love the game so much,
You want to keep
that-
going.
You
but
need
you're
to
spending
experience
like
past
you're
it,
spending
yeah.
2 hours and you're like, I just can't get it, and then you find out
How easy it was.
how easy it
Yeah.
was, and it's like you missed one thing.
And that's the thing about Yoshi, like in those games, it's like when my girlfriend plays it, she doesn't have to do any of that. She just gets a constant emotion of fun. It's just fun, and you
Yeah.
don't feel defeated. And that's what I like about
Yeah.
games, is that like I'm not saying my life is hard, but there's definitely hardships in my life, and then video games are for me to escape, and I
Yeah.
just want to control. That's why I choose to play these games like Skyrim. It's
a good point.
You know, they're
Oh
like,
yeah.
So you're saying you like video games as escape from the hardships of life?
yeah, and a lot of people, you know, like I choose to make my life. I put myself into positions where I'm doing things that are going to benefit me, but sometimes I have to find a way to relax and
Yeah.
just
Video
see-
games are a way to
and,
relax.
Like, and you like when I play Roller Coaster Tycoon. You know, I play.
Sometimes for me, video games are a way to emulate the difficulties of real life.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
Like,
that's and
that's what's great about video games is they can be either or.
mhm.
I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
they have the potential to be like
It's
amazing.
Very
It's-
cathartic. Yeah.
It allows for expression in many ways, right? And
Oh,
you
yeah.
can tell a story through it that has no difficulty. You can play legitimately through a story that you have no input
Detroit
on,
Become Human,
and it is
and-
still a video game. But even if your decisions didn't have an impact, like if there's two different ends to the game and one decision gives you one or the other, and like all the rest of it is hitting the button at the right time or not, like the difficulty isn't there in that game. It's a game that makes you present through its story.
and that's what I look for in a game. And like, I can play these hard games. Hollow Knight is a beautiful game. Playing that game just feels good, and that's not an easy game, but it's something that I can enjoy, and I can still get that difficulty out of it when I'm looking for it. It's not that I'm ignoring it. It's just it's not what I'm looking for at the moment. But if there's ever a chance where I'm going to choose a difficult game, it's going to be Hollow Knight. It's going to be games like that where there's so much given to me. Like Mario, like I'm thinking Sunshine. I played a lot of that game.
Oh, yeah.
That game's pretty difficult. It's probably the most difficult 3D Mario game. That's probably Sunshine.
that might be a bit of a
controversial
stretch.
opinion.
I think Sunshine is extremely difficult. That when you're in the flood and you have to like push the thing around on that's just extremely difficult. And then the pinball one and the one wrong move and you can just fall to the bottom and it just gets bad. Oh my god.
A lot of personal frustration with that, of course. I personally feel like that game isn't as difficult as others in the series, but definitely through time, I feel like they've gotten easier and easier.
Yeah, because
especially
we're
since
getting
Sunshine.
older. Yeah, and then, like before we go to Kyle, what do you think is the most difficult Mario game? Don't say it. You can't say Mario to like the
I will
lost
not
levels.
say
yeah.
that, and I will
Why-
not
why
say
can't
Mario
you-
Maker.
What about
either.
3D? How about the 3D games? Let's. 'Cause
Why can't he say Mario 2 The Lost Levels?
Because I want to clarify as 3D games.
Okay. Do
That's-
you think
yeah,
that
I
is
do
the
think
hardest 2D
Oh
game
yeah.
yet?
Oh,
Okay.
Mario 2 is
Yeah.
pretty ridiculous.
Mario 2 The Lost Levels,
Yes.
not the Mario Brothers 2,
No.
the one where you can play as
Doki
Peach
or
and
whatever it was
Doki.
called.
Yeah, the off-brand
Yeah.
thing.
No, but what do you think is the most difficult 3D Mario?
The
game?
hardest 3D Mario?
Yeah.
Definitely Mario 64.
Interesting.
I would
Through and
agree with
through.
that. I would
I
definitely
think
agree with that.
Rainbow Cruise and Tick-Tock Clock are two of the greatest designed
there's
3D
Rainbow Cruise
platforming
is
levels of all
awesome.
time.
But I had more fun completing those levels, but whereas Sunshine, I was just wanting to get it over with.
I feel
Even though
like
I like both of those games, it was just more like
I'm just saying, though, you were there, Bilot, when I beat Super Mario 64. And do you remember the smile I had on my face when I beat that game and I saw
you
the
got
letter?
the last Bowser throw.
I got the
I
last
remember
Bowser
the
throw,
feeling
and
of
I
you
would-
missing 4 times at least.
Yeah, and then
Different runs on the Bowser throws, and then he jumps back up and just lands on you or something.
But then when you finally get it and you beat Super Mario 64 and Peach gives you that little kiss and
you finally get the cake.
Did you go see Yoshi?
I don't think I did actually get 120 stars.
game.
Yeah, exactly. You don't even feel like you beat it to some people if you didn't
Yeah.
get every single star and go meet
I
Yoshi at the
didn't.
top of the castle.
I didn't.
Like and that's because it's really hard. To get 100
It is hard
coins
to
in
get
every
all of
level
them,
is
yeah.
actually really hard.
Yeah.
The one water level, the first one, I don't remember
Dire
exactly
Drops,
what
is
it's
that
called.
Yeah,
Tried it.
It has like 106 coins total in it.
yeah.
If you don't like do things to duplicate them in any way, shape, or form, like you have to get every single coin on the map.
Yeah, I can understand that. Let's go to
So,
Kyle.
what do you think? What do you think your definition of difficulty is?
I play a lot of single player games, as we all know. So personally, what defines difficulty for me is the journey. It's what I learned along the way.
That's good.
A great example of that is God of War, the most recent one for PS4. I can say with confidence from the beginning of the game to the end is that like even just like lessons you learn outside of the game, like the connections you make with characters and all that. I spent so many hours in that game, at like 80 plus hours easily. And by the end, when I fought the Valkyrie Queen, I had probably the best gear I could possibly get without playing a new game run. And I had played almost all the trials and hell and all that, and like I'd gotten really far, and I fought this boss. I think it was like 55 plus times, and I just have like ingrained into my head your face getting smashed down against the ground and you initiate that fight. Alex was there for about 30 of those runs, and like I had to take legitimate breaks. I was like,
She literally just take your head up and slams it on the ground.
I was like, I don't know if I can do this anymore, but like when you put that many hours into a game, it's almost like an obligation to finish it.
Difficulty is about the journey.
You owe it more to you owe it to yourself and to the game. And like when you put so much of your time, your life into a game like that, and when you get stuck at a huge obstacle like that, it's kind of overbearing at sometimes.
Playing through Sekiro, the first real boss that like really put me through the ringer was Lady Butterfly.
Yeah.
And honestly, like I got to the point in that game myself where I questioned if I still wanted to try to complete it, because Lady Butterfly I lost to probably like 75 times in a row.
It's one of the largest learning curves in the game.
Because
just fighting her. Yeah.
Legitimately, like I consider myself pretty good at these games even.
Yeah.
And I just tried to do it before I went and got anything else. Like the moment I could go to Ashina Castle or whatever it was. I can't remember the name exactly.
It's in the flashbacks, yeah.
Yeah, but the minute you can go to the flashback, I went. And I got all the way to Lady Butterfly before going back even once. And I swear I died like 75 times.
Yeah, and you don't want to put it down because
you can't.
You've invested that time, and you're like,
You
if
feel
I don't want to give up,
You feel disrespected every single time you die. Like when you die to Lady Butterfly, she says "Mada Mada." She calls you dumb.
Young wolf, your fangs aren't sharp enough for something like that. And you're like,
playing English,
okay, okay, yeah, you're gonna be like that, okay. It's frustrating. But that's also kind of what makes it worthwhile,
Exactly. That's the only reason that I'm proud to say that I completed Sekiro.
Yeah.
It's because I died to Lady Butterfly 75 times in a row.
And I mean, this is like uniquely with single player games is like when it's a good story. I mean, not all single player games have a great story, obviously.
It adds to the experience.
It adds
so
to
much.
exactly. It adds to the like you overcoming those obstacles because you want to get to that next part of the story that's just gonna bring it all together. It's like, wow, I overcame all this, and I got to like it's like finishing a book, I've examined everything I possibly could in this game.
I wish Nintendo would do that more. I wish
it's not necessarily their style. Their style is the crowd friendly stuff.
But like Paper Mario has such a good story, and it's such a good
The
game.
Shadow Queen fight at the end of Thousand Year Door is arguably hard if you don't have a broken badge build at the time.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
From I played a lot of Thousand Year Door, and
it's not hard for you anymore.
No, I can go up to Shadow Queen and just
perfect guard everything.
But that's because you spent that much time in the game to where you know it in and out. You know,
there's a run called Danger Mario, where it's like it's like if you when you're there's badges in the game.
Oh
where if
yeah,
set
you
your
have like
H-
1 hit point essentially.
if you set that's too dangerous. But
Yeah.
it's called Danger Mario, and it's if you set your HP to 5, which you can do by like going to this guy and he sets your HP to 5, and the badge says you do +2 damage if you're at HP 5.
Yeah, and with the multi-bounce attack, you just do like 1 billion damage.
And
with
you
that.
can get like 20 of these.
Yeah.
So you can get 20 of these +2s.
Yeah.
And then you can get all these badges that are like if you're at 5 health, you take less damage.
Yeah.
So you're basically not only invincible, but you also do massive damage. Like
Yeah.
you can become extremely overpowered.
So, yeah,
but it takes a lot of work to
Yeah.
get to this
Yeah,
point.
exactly.
And there's also still difficulty there because some enemies do a certain amount of damage no matter what. Like I'm pretty sure the last boss of the Pit of 100 Trials
Bone
just
Tail,
does-
you can't,
you
perfect
can't
guard.
super guard and does a base amount of damage no matter how much resistance you have. Like if you have the defense from like coops or anything
but if
like
you're
that. at the
doing,
time.
but if you're doing like the most optimal build, you go
Yeah.
up to Bone Tail.
Oh, and you
kill
hit him in
one
2
hit.
hits? Yeah.
But
I guess coming back around to the point, I think what I'm trying to say is the difficulty is putting that time into the game.
Oh yeah.
You know, dedicating.
Okay.
He was
that's,
specific-
that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
Is like the difficulty of a run like that is you plan it.
You play
out.
it so much that you know everything you're supposed to do.
Like there's difficulty in planning out, optimizing the most build.
Yeah.
Even though
Yeah.
the game becomes so easy, it was about the journey of planning out
And
this most
you an
optimal
example,
build.
Fire Emblem is exactly like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to try the new difficulty they put in and
Yeah,
see
but
how hard it
These
is.
story-driven games are I mean, they add so much to that difficulty. You know,
Oh yeah, the merciful.
it makes it so much more meaningful when you get that completion of like I
Yeah,
get
if
to
it's
see the
compelling,
culmination of these
yeah.
characters, these branching storylines.
Yeah,
Yeah, and you don't get that same feeling from it with something like Octopath Traveler in comparison to something like Final Fantasy VII that had these crazy overbearing boss fights as opposed to like semi real life situations. Like,
Yeah. There's just a different satisfaction that comes from overcoming difficulty in games like God of War versus games like League of Legends.
Yeah.
You know,
consider Final Fantasy VII difficult.
I think the harder boss fights are ridiculous if you're not doing something that is arguably in the system strong, which is not many options if you're running the optimal builds of teams. Like
I think with RPGs, you kind of just have to learn the system.
yeah,
Yes,
you
you do.
really
You
have
definitely
to
do.
be up on your knowledge on what's good or bad, and that's what dictates the difficulty of it.
'Cause-
If you're super leveled in the right ways, the game is really easy. You
Yes,
just hit
absolutely.
the same 2 buttons and kill everything. But you have to spend 35 minutes killing the same bad guy
Yeah.
over and over to get to
But
that
it's
point.
up to the integrity of the player not to over level yourself. At that point.
Exactly,
course.
especially with an RPG like that.
You should
can
play RPGs blind your first time.
you
Yes,
can summon a
absolutely.
companion in Skyrim and kill it with your sword to level up
Yeah.
your one-handing
But
for a while.
that's what makes that
But-
difficulty fun. Is especially I personally love going into games not knowing anything about it. Same thing with
Yeah, that's
movies.
the best
You know,
part.
I generally don't watch trailers for movies these days, just because that's another topic. But like they
Mm-hmm.
spoil a lot of the movies these days in trailers. Same thing with games, though. I mean, unless it's a game I'm specifically interested in, let's say Borderlands 3, where it's not really like a story-driven thing. It's more about you know like loot, loot, loot. You know, play with friends. Like I'm going to be on this for 60 hours until I get that goddamn gun I want. You know, it's about just playing with friends in those situations. It's
Oh, in
it's
those,
more of a
yeah, for
cooperative
sure.
experience than it is a solo thing. So
I think analyzing all of us in our descriptions of difficulty, we definitely have a lot of coverage.
I think we're
Of a
missing
lot of things.
someone's interpretation of difficulty.
Yeah, Alex, do you have an interpretation?
I think
I kind of do. Yeah. To me, difficulty is it's a game that's gonna make you sit down, and in order to get better at that game, you have to learn the depths of that game, essentially how the game plays. That this can be related to PvP and PvE. In my opinion, examples. I'm gonna be like shooting examples out of fucking nowhere, but Skyrim is not a hard game because you can skate by without fucking learning the game.
Yeah,
Like you
it's true.
literally,
Exactly.
it
It's true.
gives you.
You can do
It
whatever
gives
you
you
want, whenever.
perks that make you busted, and you can do whatever you want. You don't have to learn the game
That's
to know
also
the
what
game.
makes that game so
But
great.
Bennett
though.
Foddy,
Yeah.
in a way,
getting over with Bennett Foddy,
you have to learn that.
you have to get so good at swinging that sledge pick axe, whatever the hell around
Yeah.
is. You have to get so good at it you have to almost be perfect. Or like with melee, objectively, like to play, it's pretty easy. But if you want to get good at beating someone else, you have to learn tech skill. You have to learn like if you want. It's about when a game offers you more things to learn through its mechanics, and when it has that depth of mechanic to it.
It also has to require you to use them.
Like specifically when it requires you to be like to have to use those hard mechanics for you to learn in order to do better in the game. That to me is where difficulty shines.
A flat Mario
A good example
level.
of a game that has not a lot of depth but is insanely hard is that Aladdin game for like what was it, PS2 or what?
No,
that was
for the
that was
NES.
NES,
Excuse me,
yeah.
I'm dumb.
Super
But-
Nintendo?
Right.
Yeah,
or
that
some- one
game,
of those,
that game
yeah.
is one of, in essence, is just a basic ass platforming game. But the fact that like you have to know the game so well to the point where you're frame perfect in order to beat some levels, that's difficult.
It's the same thing with the
Oh,
Lion
yeah.
King
Do
game.
people have fun
What
with
do you mean?
that?
So it sounds like your difficulty for you is through repetition almost.
It's not necessarily
Not
repetition.
not only
It's-
repetition,
right,
but
it's
based a
Are
lot
you
in
saying
that.
learning
when a
the
game
system
when a
is-
game forcefully paces you, or when a game makes you learn the ins and out of the game, like Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight's a good example. You cannot skate by in Hollow Knight by just trying to play a regular
Oh,
platforming
absolutely
game.
not,
It hits
no.
you. You have to be good at the combat. You have to know exactly how things are spaced out. You have to be perfect at timing, bounce. What are they called? When you bounce, when you do the down airs.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? You have to be good at those things. You have to learn the game and its timings and its pace in and of
So-
itself. And you have to adjust yourself to that template. And when a game makes you do that, and when it keeps letting you get better and better in that aspect, that to me is difficult.
So like kind of like understanding the rhythm of a game.
Essentially, maybe a good game that handles difficulty, like a great game, a fantastic game, is a game that it paces how you learn the system, like really good with how you're playing along with it.
Yeah, with your actual sense of self difficulty.
Like
Yeah, I
Ocarina of Time, I think does
Right.
a really good job of like having you learn the system
Oh yeah.
as you play along and like
So kind of like a game that grows with you.
Yeah.
yeah, like difficulty
Yeah,
curve,
yeah.
difficulty
Yeah.
curve.
Like the
One that
Deku-
has a
The
problem.
Deku Tree in
Yeah.
Ocarina of Time is pretty simple once you get the hang of it, right? You do it the first time, you're like, oh, this is what
Yeah.
this does. But then you play it
Puzzles-
again, right?
Puzzles may not be the best example to even have here. Like a flat open Mario level, the only goal is to get to the end.
Yeah.
It's really easy to kill the Lakitu at the beginning and fly right to the end. But if you put a ceiling 6 inches above the ground, then you still have to deal with all the obstacles in front of you, as opposed to flying directly over them. You can offer something while maintaining challenge in this given aspect, but if you don't have that ceiling, a ceiling is a great word for this kind of thing, then
literally,
Yeah.
literally,
then
really.
you can go as high as you want.
Wow, what
So
a great
in a game
metaphor.
like Skyrim that has no limits on it from the moment you get control of your character,
Yes. Where you can literally just go kill a town if you're really feeling like that's sadistic.
it's a lot harder
That's the
than
magic of that
Exactly,
game.
yeah.
Dark Souls, where you can go this place or that place right now.
I do want to circle around to the Skyrim argument, and like that's why a lot of people actually don't like Skyrim, is because it is easy. If you look at Oblivion and Morrowind, Morrowind's actually it's pretty difficult. It's kind of the same feeling as Ocarina of Time, where it doesn't tell you where to go. You
Yeah,
have to look at it
You
yourself.
can actually swing your weapon and miss.
Yeah.
Like, think about that. I remember playing Morrowind, and I got into
Yeah, it's
Elder
D&D
Scrolls.
inspired.
I got into
Yeah.
Elder Scrolls backwards. I played Skyrim first,
Yeah.
then
same.
Oblivion,
I think a lot of people
and then
did.
Morrowind, and then I got to Morrowind, and I'm like, am I playing D&D right now? I would just like to say on a side note that D&D is kind of like the perfect game
Yes.
for like just difficulty
Another
and,
Yeah,
like,
it's legitimately
Podcast.
tailored specifically to people.
to the players, like
Yeah.
the DM, like
Yeah.
but
That's the point, is that it has the perfect difficulty curve.
And also,
I love RPGs that try to emulate
Games-
D&D as much as
Yeah.
possible.
and I think it's games that let you use your imagination is what helps create that difficulty. You know, it's what you can imagine, what you can create in your head. That's like, how do I overcome this thing that I created the problem for myself? You know, like and that's the beautiful thing about D&D is when you have someone like a DM who's creating that difficulty for you. It's kind of like PvP in a way. You know.
Yeah, I mean, you have certain DMs that, like some guy named Jeremy, for
Oh,
example,
yes.
whose like philosophy is if I didn't kill you on the first session we played, it wasn't a good session. Although you have other DMs who are like, I'm going to try to let my players live as long as they can.
Wow, that's-
Or you have other players who are like, just the dice rolls what they roll, and that's what happens.
Yep.
And
Oh yeah.
That's
Who
really
cares?
interesting because I agree with that philosophy. Every time I do a D&D session, on the first session, someone always dies or gets to 0 HP. Have you noticed that?
That's true.
do you plan that?
No.
It just always happens?
Yeah, I
Roll
just
Okay.
go
dice?
with the dice.
Usually the person who dies is Caleb. So.
I usually structure when I'm DMing, I try to structure it honestly.
Oh,
I
yeah.
structure.
Oh yeah,
I
it's
cheat.
honest. Honesty. That's
I
where the
cheat.
fun comes in. Oh, you cheat.
I cheat with my rolls.
Get out of here. No, I'm just kidding.
I cheat with my rolls.
it's
To be
necessary
honest.
You're trying to
sometimes.
just
Yeah,
storytell.
yeah.
I
essentially.
like sometimes I think like a character shouldn't die here for the sake of the story, but sometimes it's like the dice rolls with.
Yeah,
the
you
dice
gotta let it
rolls.
roll.
That's fate.
Let it be where it is,
I
you know?
believe I believe in fate to a certain extent.
Yeah, but fate has nothing to do with
Oh, yeah.
difficulty. Like that's like
I know. I'm
yeah.
just putting that in there.
I really like to bring up the example that a lot of people bring up with tailoring difficulty to players, and that's in Left 4 Dead. Left 4 Dead 2 implemented the director.
Oh, those
Oh,
are
yeah,
fantastic
yeah.
systems.
Which was an AI that specifically tried to tailor the game and the difficulty to how well the players were doing at the time.
Oh,
How
So-
well did that work?
I honestly feel
pretty
like
excellent.
it was probably easy to implement and had crazy great results for how little they actually went in depth on it. I feel like they really just looked at the game as like point A, point B, and the closer you are to point B in X amount of time is how well you're doing. So they just threw more
Dude.
special infected at
Yeah.
at
You Valve is smart, man. Valve is smart.
They
I
stopped
wish,
making
I wish they were
games.
making more games.
Yeah.
They
I
are
think a lot of people
visionaries.
wish that.
They are visionaries when it comes to
And
game
I-
design.
honestly, like, so many games probably have utilized this since, but I always remember hearing about this being the one that like broke the ground
yes,
with it.
absolutely.
when you aren't doing good teamwork in Left 4 Dead, you fail. When you are doing some cool things, when someone
Yeah.
gets down, you're like, I'm going to save him. I feel like you're rewarded
Unless
with, like,
they're
you're going to
by
save
a
them. And you
witch.
got,
Yeah.
yeah.
In which case you're leaving there.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But-
That's true.
It's really simple the way that they like do difficulty in that game, because when you are losing, it's that you didn't react fast enough to the thing that gave you complete loss of control of your character. You were legitimately completely victimized by the game
Yeah.
and must be saved by your teammates.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah.
They
And
take you
that's
out of the
genius,
game
yeah.
It's a side note.
until they save you momentarily. If you don't get saved, you lost. You
Yeah.
died. You lost completely then. So
wanna
they
play Left 4 Dead
hinged the
now.
game on
Me too.
its difficulty on how well you worked together, on how quickly you responded when your teammates were in danger. So throwing more special infected at you that incapacitate you more often is like, if you're doing well, you're not on the ground a lot.
Yeah.
If you're not doing well, you're dead already.
Well, most of the time
So
it's
they make
just
the
let
game
Caleb
easier.
take care of everything, and we just kind of, follow
But hey,
behind.
that's fun, though. That's
Of
what we like
course.
to do. We
You
like,
really did learn too,
yeah,
right?
yeah, you
How to get better.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's so,
Can Valve just make more games?
Dude,
Can they just,
that's what people have been asking for decades, and
Where's
I mean, look
Half-Life?
where we are. So
like when Valve makes a game, it's always like it's
Well,
groundbreaking. It's
This
groundbreaking.
mechanic is so great because they showed it off so in depth. I'm pretty sure a game like Borderlands 3 has a mechanic like this to some degree, right? Like I don't
that's
know how
on-
to find out if we if you
I
could
think it's
just
probably
Google
on like
it
the later
even.
difficulties, like Mayhem. Actually, that might be worth looking up. It's have like an artificial difficulty in Borderlands 3. In some
Maybe
form.
not specifically.
Maybe
for that,
maybe
just
for the maybe for
look
like
up
that
the
endgame
director
stuff.
Series.
in Left 4 Dead
Um,
2 and how often similar things are used. Like if we can't find an exact example of it quickly, we'll just
Yeah.
remember it for next time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that is something that I'd like to know is how often that technology is
But
utilized.
That's-
I'm
on-
sure often enough.
It's
because
probably like
so brilliant.
It's probably like in a horde, like Gears of War.
Well,
it's
I-
probably like games
Horde
like
modes
that.
like
Like,
that.
I wanted
it's
to
hard
say-
to implement. AI is hard to. It's hard to develop.
Oh, yeah.
I kind of wanted to say as a side
Good
note,
AI is hard.
a really recent example of a great game that not everybody's for it, but it's a single player game, Alien Isolation. The AI they
Exactly.
built for that
Oh,
game
yeah.
hunts
Yeah.
you based on how you play. So if you're using one item too much, say like stun grenades, it will adapt to how like you're using that, and it will just learn to not be around when you use it, or it will
Yeah.
be resistant to it.
And
That's
the-
awesome.
Yes.
The AI in
And
that
it's
game
horrifying.
is so brilliant because it's two AIs. There is one AI that knows everything.
Yep.
And its job is to create the best horror scenario for the player. And then there's the aliens AI, which is 1000% a predator.
Yep.
It does not know where you are at any given time and takes the hints that the main director gives it to find you.
Yes.
So it'll let it sniff in this locker if it wants to.
And a really
In this
a
one
really
moment.
unique thing is if you're
didn't
running
know that.
around a lot
That's
in the
cool.
game, it will hide up in more of the top vents. So if you're running, it can just catch you instantly. And
That's so cool.
it'll start
What?
learning where you like. I
Yeah.
played it for like 25 plus hours, and if you hide in too many of the same kind of spots, if you're in too many lockers throughout the game, it will specifically search lockers.
Yeah.
It's insane and it's
That is
horrifying
And
at
that's
the same
why
time.
that's what that other director does though.
Yeah.
It tracks the player's movement. It finds out the things that you tend to do so it can give more hints to the alien
that's like,
when you're
that's
doing
like
them.
straight up like actual artificial intelligence.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is.
Like this is like legitimately like
but isn't
a
it a little
sentient being?
more complicated than you would think it would have to be? It not only does it require someone nearly playing an example of God to be able to really get the predator instinct built in and also maintain fear on someone in the prey's side, but like how much harder would it be to implement in a game that's actions are so concrete and can't be paced out like that? Like a game with a gun in it
And-
that everybody expects to feel a certain way because Call of Duty or
And-
Halo felt this way when they used to play it.
That's-
And they have to abide by that rule. Like these cool groundbreaking AIs are in these such like niche categories, it feels, except Left 4 Dead.
And that's such a completely different kind of challenge as when it forces the player to get more creative with how you
Yeah.
play. You know, if a game forces me to change how I've been playing the game halfway through it, that's horrifying because I have no idea what to do,
In
you
a
know?
horror game too.
Especially in that kind of situation where you're always just like, I can't like turn around without thinking this thing's gonna be right behind me every damn time. And most of the time it is. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think the game industry is gonna go that way.
No,
'cause
very
they're-
few games do that
they're,
these
They're
days.
looking more towards like this whole live service thing.
Yeah.
And we should talk about that at another time.
Yeah,
That's a whole
absolutely.
nother
subscription
fiasco,
services.
Should we start finishing up soon?
Yeah, I think
Like,
Alex
yeah,
had done some research, right?
Honestly, it's hard to describe. Like
Yeah, it's-
AI in
yeah.
video games stretches from you playing
Yeah.
against a chess robot to having to NPCs to
Yeah.
combat-based AI to.
Chess,
it's hard
chess
to
is
pin
also
it down. That reminds me
a
though
really
of this.
great game.
It kills me. It kills me that I
Nice.
can't remember this game. But there's this semi like horror-esque type game coming out where you're on this spaceship and you're this chick, and the whole point is that this robot on the ship learns exactly how you play the game.
Space Odyssey 2001.
Like the game learns your habits, how you play the game, how you move around, and then like it makes a horror game based on every single thing that you do. And it was like the coolest concept to me. And I can't remember for the life of me. It
Do you
was
remember
so
what
cool.
era
On a
this was?
small note of
This looked, I
AIs
remember
and-
the graphics were pretty new.
We'll try to find
Oh, you're
the
talking about. You're not talking about System Shock 3, are you?
It doesn't sound
System.
familiar.
I just wanted to mention that.
System
Give a
Shock
shout
2
out to
came
that
into
real
my
quick.
System Shock 2 came into my
Well,
mind.
they just released the trailer for System Shock 3 like last week.
Really?
Yes, it just came out.
I had no idea.
Yeah,
System Shock 2 is a game that I've always wanted to play but never gotten around to it.
I'm very curious about System Shock 3.
Yeah, that'll be cool. I had no idea they released a new trailer for it. It's awesome.
Yeah, we could probably start on final thoughts on difficulty. I
But
think
I think we kind of covered it.
we covered all. I think most of our
I
bases
want
here.
to like discuss what we did talk about.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
like going in backwards chronological order, we talked about AI. Like AI as a difficulty, like it
AI
learns you. It learns what you're doing.
AI is essential.
regard to
And then we talked
difficulty
about what
specifically.
was
Because when we're talking about PvE as difficulty, AI is so essential.
Yes,
to that.
absolutely.
yeah.
Because that is player versus AI.
yeah.
So what did we talk about before that? We talked about AI. Then
We talked about
before that-
PvP before that. I mean, we
PvP
talked about
was,
League of
yeah.
Legends.
Yeah, that-
That's the
Personal
two
challenge
types of
versus somebody else.
difficulty.
You know.
How these two types of difficulty can give you kind of the same sense of rush of euphoria that we love.
And then the one before that was just like pattern based gaming, like with
Yeah.
like of course all these have to do with
Yeah.
AI except for the PvP kind of, but like the pattern of like
I think
like
that can be summed
Dark
up by
Souls.
overcoming a struggle.
Yeah,
that
that-
can be summed up really by not repetitive as much as like if you lost, you lost.
Yeah. Anything else?
I mean, I think it's interesting what everybody's take on difficulty was. I think that's a huge thing is that difficulty is different for every person. It's going to be different for every person no matter what. You can't really define a genre as difficult, in my opinion.
Yeah, I feel like we did get caught up trying to do that though.
Yeah.
We tried to make it so we
Calling me out here,
we,
huh?
we put a
absolutely.
blanket on or something.
I'm gonna put you center stage
But
here,
no,
you son of a
I-
bitch.
We got on both sides of that.
Yeah.
I feel like we did try to like define for a moment there one overbearing thing about a genre that we shouldn't have.
I will say definitely that I don't think any genre is inherently difficult.
It
or
it
indifferent.
depends on
You can have the
I will,
artist
I will
disagree.
defend myself for saying that. I will correct myself too by saying like I think it's the easiest genre to me. And again, these are all opinions.
Yeah, this is
we're not
circular,
stating facts here, obviously. but
we're not.
When I've played a game, I find it more easy to play a simulation game than it is to play like a platform or a shooter
Yeah.
or any of those games. That's just personally me, and I'll just take that to the grave.
And-
Make fun of me for it.
No,
but
no.
I know.
I mean, and that's the beautiful thing is that how far games have come where we can have that
Yeah.
opinion. That we,
Yeah.
I think this is difficult, and someone else can have a completely different experience with that same genre, and
find it
yeah,
extremely difficult.
exactly. You like to play the more casual simulation games, where something like Kerbal Space Simulator, and it's. You can have two people at the exact opposite ends
Yeah.
of a genre in terms of
Yeah.
difficulty, and
Yeah,
that's
the guy that plays
just-
Goat Simulator and the guy that plays Kerbal
Okay, Goat
Space
Simulator
Program.
is not.
but it speaks to the breadth of games we have these days,
Yeah.
and I mean, I can remember from playing games when I was a kid. It's so much different. We have so many options these days.
But yeah, I think we covered it.
Yeah,
The only thing I wish we were
difficulty
talking about more, we didn't talk about difficulty in like music rhythm-based games, and there's only one game that I want to mention specifically, and that is Thumper.
Oh, baby.
Thumper is a
all rhythm
beautiful.
games
excellent.
create
But
difficulty.
I'm just saying
pretty
that is a
easily.
good example of a game that is really like that makes you learn the game to the point where you have to almost be perfect.
Yeah,
I mean,
you have
like-
to you have to go what we stated as ultra instinct because you have to not think about it anymore.
Yeah.
Just feel it out.
And-
yeah,
and if
it's
you think
also-
you should hit that before you even think it, hit it.
On a side note, I mean, that's a genre of games that I think it's actually starting to pick up a little more. I mean, think like Cadence of Hyrule
Oh,
is one that came out really recently that people
It's
are
having
really,
a
really liking.
resurgence.
A lot of
Yes.
people liked Crypt of the Necrodancer
Exactly,
a lot when
yeah.
it came out.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As a little
I
side
think we
note,
could do a whole podcast on just Rock Band and Guitar Hero.
Oh, absolutely we
especially
could.
if we've
Yeah.
all
That's what I did for the
experienced
future.
music programs. Like it's
Yeah.
just going through that and playing Guitar Hero Rock Band. We could talk about that for hours,
Yeah.
probably.
The philosophy of difficulty. I think we covered it pretty good here.
Yeah. I think I want to hear what other people have to say. Like, what's your definition of difficulty?
yeah.
Don't go off what we say.
Yeah.
I mean,
leave
we're
it-
just some
leave-
assholes who like are masochists. So
I
Like,
can't
what are
wait
games?
until
What are
someone
games
tries
that
to
are hard
bully
to
me.
you? Like, what makes them hard for you? Like, tell us about that.
Why
one.
is
tell
David
us about
such an
that one-
idiot?
also tell us why we're wrong. I mean, call us
Yeah.
out if you need to.
Call me out.
Tell us about the
Yeah,
one
call
time
David
you-
out specifically. He's
Tell us
wrong.
Tell us about the one time you threw your controller on the ground and cried like a baby because you couldn't be a sure part in the game.
Anybody break their TV?
Never
With
my
once,
TV.
once.
What?
Yes. I used to have
really?
I used to have a TV back when I lived at the other house on Pearson Street. I used to have a TV up in my room. And it was a dumb game to have broken a TV on with Super Mario Galaxy 2.
Oh my!
That's like, why that game?
Okay. That's a long story.
We're trying to end the
yeah,
podcast.
it's a really
here.
long story.
Really
Long story short, I fell off Yoshi way too many times. And I ended up
Bro, get out of
breaking
here!
my controller and my TV. And then I wasn't allowed to play Super Mario Galaxy 2.
You broke
for
my
like half a-
controller.
Shut up. I didn't break the
Yeah, you
controller.
threw it. I'm like, you threw,
Shut up.
What were you playing? Halo? Right? And you.
Okay, you thought I broke your
No,
controller. I
you
did not
totally.
break your
You
controller.
threw it on
Okay,
my
This is-
hard
and then
base.
They're both taking it to the grave.
Yeah, all right.
No, he's wrong. He's wrong. Folks,
No,
he's wrong. He's
no.
wrong. Let's just
All
be
right,
honest.
all right. Yeah, so we had some fun here. I'm Sean,
Bilot.
Alex.
David.
Kyle.
and we're the guys with beards.
Thank you.